The main thing God gets out of your life is not what you achieve. It's not your resume. It's not your accomplishments. It's not your GPA if you're going to school. It's not your possessions. It's the person that you become. And mostly that has to do with what your character becomes. What is that pattern of thoughts and perceptions and desires and then decisions and then behaviors that becomes the sum total of your life? We're going to be looking at that. I am sending out a bonus video. This is the second bonus video. Last week, I mentioned for everybody that had been at Cathedral of Faith when I was preaching there that we are coming up with a series, but it's going to be in another week. But I got the date wrong. It's actually going to be in one more week. So on this coming up Monday is when the series will launch. And I wanted to let you know about that. As long as I'm doing that, I thought, well, I'll send you a few more thoughts on this topic of character. And I would invite you to reflect on this question today. What would a person of good character do? Whatever situation you're facing in the next moment through this day, and many, many, many opportunities for this discovery will come up, ask the question, what would a person of good character do? There's a fascinating contrast in the Bible, in the book of Acts, which, as you may know, is the story of the spread of the early church. And the Apostle Paul goes to a place called Thessalonica and talks about this good news that God has acted in Jesus. And the response there was really bad. And we're told that they get some people they rounded up some bad characters, that little word. And there's actually a kind of a riot. They deliberately inflict a great deal of pain and suffering and problems on Paul and his friends. And then he goes to another place called Berea, and the text says, but the Bereans were a people of more noble character. And that phrase alone was such a wonderful one that back in the day, churches would sometimes have Sunday school classes of adults that would call themselves the Bereans. And the author of the book of Acts, Luke, goes on to say that they eagerly received the message. And from day to day, they examined the scriptures to see if what Paul said was actually true. And there's actually kind of a wealth of character information about that. They eagerly received something. They had receptive and open minds. They wanted to learn, but they were not gullible. They weren't passive. They actually examined. They did the work. They cultivated a sense of logic and rationality and a hunger for the truth, and then were ready to submit the truth when they found it. And so they were people of a more noble character. And it raises this question when you compare those two different places and those two different kinds of people. What would a person of good character do? I was thinking about this yesterday. Nancy and I are on the road right now. We are in Chicago, and we were going to drive out to Rockford and get to have Swedish pancakes at Stockholm Inn, but then we had a problem with the car. And it would not be able to accelerate beyond 40 miles an hour. So Nancy called me because she was having breakfast then, and I called the car company, and it took a long time to get the right person at the rental car company. And then they kept trying different places to see if we could get the car replaced, and that wouldn't work. And I had work that I wanted to get done. And then the thought occurred, what would a person with good character do if they were in this situation? And what I realized, of course, immediately is they would not do most of the things that I was apt to do. They wouldn't have a lot of thoughts about how unfair it is that I have to be interrupted and what a burdensome thing this is. And they wouldn't leak when they were talking to their spouse about, oh man, it's just too bad for me that I'm having to do this stuff. And they would not be unkind to the person that they were talking with at the rental car company, who after all was doing the very best she could, even though she lives 2,000 miles away from the city where I got the rental car, and is doing her best to try to figure out how could we get a replacement car. A person of good character would think, well, this is an opportunity. I thought about a person I know of a really good character. And I knew immediately the very first thing he would do would be to look for the kingdom of God in this situation and ask, where is God in this? And how might I be able to serve the person that I'm with? And how might I be able to be kind with the person who is probably overworked and underpaid in a call center someplace, working for a rental car facility, and instead of being entitled or snippy, embrace this as a chance to encourage that person. And so I tried to do that as best as I could. And by the end of about an hour-long phone call, I said, I just want to thank you. You have been so persistent and so patient through this process. And she said, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I realized there was a way to kind of forge a little bit of a relationship and a very, very brief kind of friendship and connection there where I could have, and probably most often or naturally would have, just come across as being impatient and I'm troubled and why aren't you making everything happen for me the way that I wanted to. I also needed not to be passive, but to actually be engaged online and trying to figure out how do I solve this problem together with her. So a person with a good character is not somebody who just has nothing to do or tries to placate or is passive. There's actually a great and fairly complex journey that involves a fair amount of judgment and discernment. I was reading today, Niz just sent me an article by our friend Kerry Newhoff, and he wrote about different situations that reveal the kind of character that you have. So now you might think, as you face different situations through the day, what would a person of good character do? Think about somebody that you know and admire as a person of good character, and then ask, is that the kind of thing that I find myself doing? For example, Kerry said, when you find yourself disappointed by something, when there's an outcome that you do not want. Or he quotes another friend, I think it's Jeff, somebody I forget who, Jeff Henderson, I think. Jeff says, you reveal your character, your true character, by how you return a shopping cart. If you return a shopping cart. Is that just a trivial action with which you can't be disturbed because you're too busy and you're too important so somebody else can do that? Or do you actually do it with kind of a cheerful spirit, thinking this is a chance to help people that work at the grocery store that are probably overworked and underpaid? It's a little bit that I can do. It's like, oh man, ouch, when I hear that one. Or you reveal your character by your social media voice. What do you reveal? How do you do that? Or by the way that you respond to the social media voices of other people, particularly people with whom you might disagree. Or for me, one of them is my character is revealed when I find out that somebody disagrees with me or does not like me or doesn't like something that I have done. That is very humbling to realize that although I know the faith that I follow says that I am to love everybody, I'm most likely to love, feel affectionate towards, think highly of somebody if they think highly of me. And they might be a fabulous person, but if they disagree or they see flaws in me that very well might be in me, then I'm much more likely to not like them, to not want to think good things about them. And so my character is being revealed, and that's the main thing that I'm working for in my life. Another dimension of this that we'll talk about this now is, as we work on character, this is not an individual self-improvement project. Mostly people with good characters are not thinking about their characters. They're thinking about how do they love others. One of the primary signs of a good character is interest in a desire to help and benefit and build into and cheer on other people and to love God above all. So that's the journey that we're going to be on, but it does not start today. Now, you can work on your character today, and more power to you if you do, but my invitation for the rest of this week, as you walk through one moment to the next, is just to ask this question: what would a person with a good character do? And what might that teach me about who I want to become? Because that's the main thing God's going to get out of my life. And we launch that journey all together very soon. Love you.